Yo, what's going on, YouTube? And welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy, Kevin Forte. And today we are following up a video I made last week. We talked about the Chicago Blackhawks, and we're going to continue that theme today, heading to the Windy City. Not talking about Domi or Andreas Athanasiou. No disrespect to those guys. We're going to talk about the bigger name guys in Chicago today, as we've recently heard more stuff about Jonathan Toews and the fact that he is very unhappy with the way things have kind of unfolded there. Yet, he hasn't been able to get a trade out. And I think that it's pretty obvious why he hasn't been able to get a trade out. We'll explain that. And we'll talk about the other guy. That's going to be a lot easier for the Blackhawks to trade if they decide to trade him. Patrick Kane, but he still seemingly is set on staying in Chicago this offseason. So we're going to take a look at that. So we're going to start off with Jonathan Toews. So both of these guys, if you guys know the context of this situation, both these guys, these two are a pair, right? They came into Chicago a couple years apart, early draft picks. And what we're looking at here is Jonathan Toews, the captain of the Blackhawks for a very long time, and Patrick Kane. So both these guys signed packages to each of these guys, 16 years combined, and what is it, $10.5 million per season for each of them. So $21 million on the cap hit for 8 seasons. You do the math on that, what is that, like $162,000+ per, over the duration of that contract. And that's invested in 2 guys. And we're getting to the point where that massive contract at the time is now coming to an end, as this is the final year of that deal. And it sounds like the Blackhawks are kind of on the fence of what they want to do with these guys right now. The future is pretty clear. It sounds like by the end of their contracts next year, neither one of them will be in Chicago. So, starting off with Toews, the problem with Toews is unhappy. He doesn't want to be in Chicago. He doesn't like the direction. He doesn't like the Hagel trade. He didn't like other trades. The Anisimov trade. The Panarin trade. The Saad trade. There's been a lot going on that he has not been a fan of. And now the new general manager comes in, and he's really not happy with the direction of this team. And he wants out. But the problem is, try finding a trade partner that wants his $10.5 million on the final year of his deal as, let's be honest, probably a second at best, third-line center in the National Hockey League at this point. And on a contender, right? You have to remember that he's going to go to a contender because a team like Arizona isn't going to really want him. Now, that's what I get to. This is the next part. In a Toews trade, it's almost guaranteed that somebody will have to be a third party in that trade. So we're going to see a 3-team trade probably for Jonathan Toews. It's got to be something where, let's say Arizona's involved. They get a first-round pick from Chicago. Not their own, but Chicago has multiple first-round picks. Say you give them Tampa's pick. Give them Tampa's pick and Jonathan Toews at 50% salary, right? So Arizona takes that 50% salary, keeps that, then flips him to a contender. Just thinking of any team out there. Vancouver. Pick your poison. Whoever it ends up being. Okay? You flip that guy to another team, and there you go. And now you have your trade, because that's the only way they can move out Toews. It's just not going to work any other way. They need a third party to retain the salary. And that way Chicago is, they're going to have to give up a first to get rid of Toews, but they're not giving up their first, right? So if you're really dead set on trading Toews, it will cost you a first-round pick. Or do you just stick it out and wait till next year? And I think that's honestly the pragmatic way of going about it. It sucks for Toews that he's stuck in Chicago another year. I just don't see how a team's going to is going to want to take that salary, right? Unless Arizona or Buffalo is below the cap floor, they have no incentive to make that trade work, right? So that's what you're looking at in that scenario. The other scenario you have to remember is the Blackhawks have to be at the cap floor, right? That's why they signed Athanasiou and Domi to those contracts, because they themselves are trying to get to the cap floor. So if you're looking at a trade here with Toews, you got to find a way around that too, right? So again, it gets really sticky. They could decide not to do the third party, retain half the salary, and then just be that third party themselves, so they just eat the 50% salary. But again, that's still $5.75 million. Will a contender pay $5.75 for Jonathan Toews? Again, this is where things get a little bit weird. So that's what we're looking at with Toews. Patrick Kane, though, this one's more interesting. So this from Darren Drager, obviously a hockey insider, checked in on the Patrick Kane trade speculation, and his camp is still undecided. Everything at this point is speculative. So I want to start off with that, because that is obviously a big part of this. Now, we've also heard from Andrew Peters, the Sabres don't want to trade for Patrick Kane, but plan on pursuing him in next year's NHL free agency. So that's what we're looking at here. Patrick Kane is probably going to be in a spot right now where if he really wants to go to Buffalo, it will be available for him next year. You know, Chuck Fletcher and the Flyers, maybe take a book from the Sabres on this one, right? We're not guaranteeing ourselves getting Kane, but we're at least going to give ourselves the cap space to bring in a goal scorer that isn't always available. Chuck Fletcher and the Flyers maybe could have learned a lesson or two from that. Anyway, that's for another day. But that's good that the Sabres are doing that, right? They're putting themselves, even if they don't get Patrick Kane, they're giving themselves a freaking opportunity to get the player, right? You consider what a huge addition that would be for the Sabres. I mean, my goodness. They'd forget about Jack Eichel in an instant if they brought in Patrick Kane next summer. So that's something to consider. Now, there's also some other rumors out there, specifically the New York Rangers. Now, I hate this as an Islander fan, but Patrick Kane to the Rangers isn't that far-fetched. The Rangers have prospects that not necessarily that they want to give away, but if you're going to get Patrick Kane, maybe that's something they consider. Capo Caco, Nils Lundqvist, their first-round pick. Some of those assets they're willing to trade if they bring in Patrick Kane. And would that be enough for the Blackhawks to trade their generational talent a year from free agency? Now, I've heard some different people talk about how they think that we could see a situation where the Blackhawks are purposely blowing up the team, purposely trading DeBrincat and Hagel and all these guys that are line mates of Patrick Kane. So Kane says, listen, I want out. I don't want to be here any longer. That could be the case. So that way, if it's in his right that he wants to move, then the Blackhawks can say, well, we gave Kane the right to leave. He wants to leave. Now we make the trade, right? And that's how they kind of get around the PR thing. But the problem is, what if Kane sticks it out the rest of this year and then he says, oh yeah, I don't want to be here after the trade deadline? So that's where the Blackhawks kind of put themselves in that spot now. So it's a tale of two stories, right? Jonathan Toews, who's super frustrated, a competitive guy, but they can't trade his contract out very easily. Meanwhile, Patrick Kane sounds like he wants to stay in Chicago, right? He realizes the legacy he has in Chicago, and he wants to have a statue in front of the United Center, right? You know, being a record holder of most goals, most points as a Chicago Blackhawk player does mean something to Kane. I think that's something that part of his legacy he does want to have there. So if that's the case, I just don't think it's going to work, you know, because unfortunately we are looking at a spot where Patrick Kane is kind of being forced out, in my opinion. And I think actions are showing that by trading all of his line mates and the fact that Toews won't be back next year. That's a certain at this point. I just don't think Kane will be able to have that legacy that he really wants. And it's a shame because you look at what he's done there. He's a generational talent. He's won multiple cups, one of the modern day dynasties of the National Hockey League in the 2010s. And it sounds like it's going to kind of implode here, at least if it's not this offseason, definitely by next offseason. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Could we see Artemi Panarin and Patrick Kane reunite in New York in the Big Apple under the big lights of Broadway? Or could we see him maybe going back to his hometown in free agency next summer, going to the Buffalo Sabres? Guys, that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again next time. Peace.